Hello, welcome to the Beautification grant workshop. Today would be an introduction into the grant program for our new first-timers, as well as to our neighborhoods who frequently do the grant program themselves. We would just be overviewing some of the new changes to our program guidelines, as well as the new dates and the new changes to the grant itself. So this is a virtual meeting, so this will be uploaded within our city website, and it will include the new updated 2026 program guidelines, as well as the new deadlines for the pre and full application. We will be reviewing the Neighborhood Vitality and Beautification Grant Program, as well as any changes that we added to the program itself and any upcoming events in the next few months. So let's get started. The Neighborhood Vitality and Beautification Grant is a matching grant to assist with neighborhood beautification projects. In doing so, we hope to support neighborhoods who will promote community engagement, enhance neighborhood physically, and create lasting city relationships with our applicants. The grant is provided as a reimbursement, meaning that applicants are paid for the work completed, not before. Projects, and we also like to um, bring this to mind that projects must be new initiatives or upgrades to existing. So some of the new materials or eligibility that we have, our projects must have not been in previously funded locations within the last 7 years. So if you had done a project and it was in that project location is where you want to do another project at, that would not be eligible for this grant program. So you would have to pick a new location or wait 7 years until that time frame of 7 years has passed to rework on that funded location. Another new eligibility that we had included is projects that must be visible or accessible from a type F thoroughfare or higher based on thoroughfare plans. So the reason for this change is we are making an effort to be more definitive in our approach to new programs and initiatives, as well as how we define visibility and accessibility within our roadways or thoroughfares. The thoroughfare plan is part of the City of Plano's 2021 comprehensive plan. It was adopted by the City Council this October 2025. It identifies essential roadway facilities to support city mobility and we are trying to align ourselves closer to the city mission and goals. We're trying to align the program guidelines with the city's goals and missions for better clarity and alignment with the city's mission. So we'll go into what type F and higher looks like and what eligible project locations that our applicants can look forward to or look at when it comes to finding a visible and accessible thoroughfare type. So type A is an expressway, and that includes US Highway 75, President George Bush Turnpike, those sort of expressways. Those are mostly highest proportion of regional traffic, and we don't anticipate neighborhoods um, using these locations, an expressway location as a project area. We have not a lot of neighborhood groups who are near expressways, so we don't anticipate or we don't think it's feasible that would be happening in the future. But that is higher than F. So looking at type B, regional arteries, those are major north to south and east to west roadways, and that can be an example of Preston Road or Spring Creek Parkway. Those see high traffic levels, and those are eligible locations for a project to be conducted. Type Cs are major arteries, and those are crosstown roadways. Typically, they serve lower traffic and less regional pass-through traffic than Type B. Those are defined as K Avenue, Legacy Drive, Plano Parkway, and that's also an eligible project location. Continuing on with that, type D, we're going down the line all the way to F at this moment. So type D is a secondary artery, and that tends to support and feed into type Bs. Examples would include Old Shepherd Place, Willow Bend Drive, Los Rios Boulevard, and those see moderate levels and speed traffic movements. Um, and those would be categorized as more safer and more aligning with the type F and higher eligible project locations. And then type E would be a major collector. Those are intended for short link trips while providing access to abutting properties. So roads closer to residential and private properties. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're talking about at this moment. And they also provide connections for bicyclists and pedestrians. So that's trails and sidewalks where you would usually see those, which you would usually see at Type B major collectors. And then lastly, minor collectors. Minor collectors are intended for slow speed, low traffic volumes, and shorter lengths of trips, and are appropriate for residential, commercial, and industrial areas. So now we'll move into our ineligible project location, which is only one. So that would be a type G, which is a local residential streets. These are the most common street types and provide direct access to individual residential lots and abutting properties. So look at it as trees aligning the street, sidewalks closer to the streets, on-street parking. Those are the areas that we necessarily don't want to see project locations and wouldn't be a benefit to the public, and it would be readily accessible either to the public as well. So this is our thoroughfare plan with the city of Plano. You can see that it's labeled by type of thoroughfare, and if you just look closely at it, you can see Legacy Drive. You can see Kuwait Road. These are the type of locations that you can view, and those are some of the eligible project locations that grant projects can be located. So how do we get started? The grant process starts off with confirming your neighborhood is registered. And how you can confirm your neighborhood is registered is checking with the neighborhood registration and neighborhood group on our neighborhood resource map. So you want to check your registration as well as what neighborhood group type you are with the city of Plano. And then next you attend this grant workshop, which you already are or watching online on our city website. So let's step in the right direction. Next is contacting your program coordinator. I am the program coordinator for the beautification grant. If you would like to contact me, you can contact me through the best app neighborhood grants at plano.gov, as well as our phone number, which I will give out at the end of the meeting. But yes, you would contact me and you would send an email with a subject line beautification grant interest, and just describe the scope of the project and what you are looking for and if you are eligible. Just something along the lines of that email would be best to get the scope of what you're trying to do and what I can do to help out. And then lastly, we ask that you provide improvement area photos. So just giving us a picture of where the funding is going, where the location of the funding is going, as well as providing verification of ownership of the property or the funding location. So is it we like to stress that HOAs, HOA owned or city owned land is the best possible land, and projects located on private residential properties are not eligible for the grant. So I'm really looking into if the land itself is owned by the HOA or the city is where your best bet in getting to be eligible for the grant. After that, you will submit a pre-application and Zoom grants by February 27th. Um, we have it at the Pacific time zone because Zoom grants is based in the Pacific time zone. So it just gives you a little extra hours. So you don't have exactly at 11:59, but in Pacific time, excuse me, that's about 2 a.m. So you have a little wiggle room on that. We do ask that you turn it in on time. When you do your pre-application, please provide a city of your city agreements if you have one. And common agreements are landscaping or a irrigation agreement. Those are some of the things that you might have with the city. Another is providing your neighborhood plat. You can find that on your call on the Cullen County District appraisal district website where you can find a original plat from your neighborhood. So it would identify every lot and block within that neighborhood. Also collect bids and landscaping plans and again verifying ownership within that project scope and within that project locations. After submitting pre-applications and being reviewed by committee, we ask that you submit your full application and Zoom grants by April 17th. Any revisions to the pre-application should be included within that full applications. And you can see these deadlines within our city website as well, and it will be written into our updated program guidelines. After that, after a full application and you have received your signed program agreement that says they are approving your project, you will receive a notice to proceed. And in that, you will have a year to complete your project. And this is new because at one point we did smaller and larger grants, and smaller grants got 6 months to complete their project, and larger got 1 year. But now we are allowing for any grant size to have 1 year completion timeline to give them more time and more access to um, uh, uh, time, basically. Sorry. Um, and then after that, you will complete your work. After that 1 year is the completion of the work, and after that, you will submit it for reimbursement. And like I said, regardless of the amount requested every year, every project will have 1 year to complete. So keep that in mind. And after completing that work, you will submit for reimbursement to be reimbursed for your project. Um, your project. So the grant cycle is one cycle per fiscal year, and every neighborhood group type will have a maximum reward of 20,000. So you can go up to 20,000. After that, you would have to pay. It would be coming out of the city's not excuse me, not city, the neighborhood's match. So it would be a max of $20,000. Should funds still be available after the second cycle? After the first cycle, we may open up to a second cycle. That all depends on how much money is left and how many neighborhoods apply for the grant program. But we will let you know if that happens. For those of you with 2025 grants still open, to avoid two grants, 2026's notice to proceed will have to be issued once 2025 grant reimbursement has been submitted and approved. So we would like to get that 2025 grant reimbursements finished and completed and approved before we can give you your notice to proceed for 2026. So keep that in mind so we can avoid overlapping grant cycles. So who can apply? There are two types of groups, mandatory and voluntary groups. Within our mandatory groups, we have our mandatory homeowner associations or HOAs. A new group that we're adding within the neighborhood group types is condominium associations. So condominium associations are relatively new neighborhood groups being added to the neighborhood resource map. We have a few in the neighborhood, they're growing still. within our neighborhood map. They're still growing. They are defined as a legal organization of homeowners in a condominium project who work together to maintain property laws and the quality of neighborhood. In a condo association, each member is a owner of the interior of the unit and is a joint owner of the building's shared resources and areas. So, in other words, they own their own unit, but they also have a share in the ownership of the pool, the tennis court, the parked garage, those kind of things, those kind of areas. So, that's what a condo association is, and we have added them to our mandatory groups. So that's new. And then the voluntary groups that we have this year is homeowner associations, voluntary homeowner associations, neighborhood associations, as well as crime watch areas. So now that we know who's eligible, what eligible projects can you do? So some projects that are eligible are landscape improvements, entryway signage, neighborhood sign toppers, lighting improvements, irrigation upgrades and drought tolerance improvements, screening walls, and then a new project that we just included within our program guidelines is crime prevention through environmental design. And that is called CPTED, also known as CPTED. Crime prevention through environmental design is a crime prevention theory that highlights effective design and use of built environment to reduce crime and fear of crime. So examples of CPTED designs could include security lights, fencing, natural surveillances like bushes or trees to block off to obstruct the view of the inside of the house or the inside of the neighborhood, or guide access to for people or vehicles to your neighborhood. So just as a natural security measure, so it just reduces crime and adds a layer of protection. And crime prevention is pretty new within our scope, so we are always open to more understanding, more questions about it. If you think about a project that might fall into the crime prevention through environmental design, please discuss that with your program coordinator, and we can work with you on that. So moving forward, ineligible projects would be projects that do not meet visibility in new projects guidelines. As mentioned, projects must have not been previously funded, must not be in previously funded locations within the past 7 years, and are improvements to the existing condition. And then projects must also be visible or accessible from a type F thoroughfare or higher. So those are some of the projects ineligible. If your project's ineligible within that visible and new project guidelines, that would be not eligible for the grant program itself. Um, projects funded Projects funded within the last 7 years, as I mentioned, events, projects located on private residential properties, that are basically general maintenance. So that's sod replacement, tree trimmings, projects promoting special interest, and then projects in conflict with existing ordinances and current projects. So going into the voluntary groups and their reimbursement match. So no match is required for the neighborhood for the first 5,000 of the total pre-tax project cost. And then voluntary groups can receive 70% of their pre-tax costs covered by the city with a 30% neighborhood match for every dollar above 5,000. And that's just a really great way to help volunteers get into the beautification grant program, helping them get that little bump into helping them pay for physical improvements and beautification projects. Any taxes will not be covered by the city or counted as part of a final cost. Voluntary groups can receive a maximum award of 20,000 of the pre-tax costs. However, active crime watch groups are limited to 5,000. Going into mandatory groups and their match requirements. Mandatory groups can receive 60% of their pre-tax costs covered by the city with a 40% neighborhood match. Neighborhood groups can also receive a maximum reward of 20,000 of the pre-tax costs. Like I mentioned, any taxes will not be covered by the city or counted as part of the final cost. So I know I said a lot, and you might need some more examples of what that means when it comes to city or neighborhood match. So let's look into an example for voluntary HOAs. For a project pre-tax cost of 10,000, the city would match about 8,500. So that first initial project cost would be 5,000, which would be 100% paid by the city match. And then after that would be 3,500, which is at 70% of what's left after that 5,000 has been taken out. The neighborhood match would only be 1,500, which is 30% of the cost above 5,000. So that's what you'd be looking at moving forward for voluntary HOAs and voluntary groups. For mandatory HOAs, um, project cost. So looking at the same project pre-tax cost, which is 10,000, the city match would be 60% match, which is 6,000, and the neighborhood match would be 4,000 which is a 40% match. So it's much easier than the voluntary, but there's a bigger scope of the matches. So going into each of the application steps and processes. So pre-application requirements are due February 27th. They open up January 16th, so keep that in mind. And this will be on the city website, like I mentioned. So something new that we're doing is when you have a bid, and it must be no older than 2 months when you submit it. All bids are requiring two bids regardless of project amount. So when you start your pre-application process, please include two bids and not one. So it'll be two bids for the pre-application, and then you will go with your final bid in your final application. After that, we would like we ask that you include a site map, and it must show at least one visible thoroughfare, which was in that type of A to F thoroughfare types, um, a site location. So include a copy of your neighborhood plat, which is in the Cullen County Appraisal District website. You can find that there. Just type in your neighborhood or type in your address. It'll show you a map of it'll show you a download of your neighborhood plat. Also include improvement areas photos that are clearly labeled with surrounding infrastructure. If you're doing a landscape plan, it must be to scale and unlegible, including plant lists with quantity, spacing, scientific names, and a light study. If you're doing installation project, you provide cut sheets that must include supplier contact information and product details. Um, Moving forward. And here's an example of a landscape plan. So this is what we're kind of looking for when we say an eligible and scalable landscape plan. We're seeing definitions of spacing. We're seeing the scientific names of the plants. We're seeing how is it being utilized, how the space is being utilized, and how is it shown, what it's going to actually looks like. So that's what we're looking for when we talk about landscape plans. So moving to the full application requirements. So you will have one final bid added to your final applications. Also include any revisions that you did for the pre-application in your final application. And then include any maintenance agreements. And it must be current. Include any maintenance agreements, whether that's irrigation, landscaping, those type of agreements. It could also be a screening wall maintenance agreement. So anything in that scope, please include that within your final application. Include community support, so that's meeting minutes talking about the grant program or the grant project. And you can also include newsletter talking about the grant project. But just showing community support is very important, as well as verifiable information. So that's governing documents, board member contacts, their email, their position, their annual budget, their position, their names. Include their annual budget as well as the current bank account as well. Lastly, include your latest tax returns or proof of 501(c)(3), which is important moving forward when you do your final application. Lastly, after you've done your full application, you signed your program agreement, and you got your notice to proceed. You began work and you finished work. Then you'll start doing your reimbursement. And after completing your work, you have 30 days to put in that reimbursement request to be reimbursed. Excuse me. So after project completion, request reimbursement through Zoom grants, provide final invoices, proof of payment, W-9, before and after pictures, and any permit documentation necessary. Neighborhoods may complete a phased approach where funding for specific parts of a project are reimbursed as are completed. So for voluntary groups, they may request direct vendor payment with justification within their pre-application, and that decision will be up to the program coordinator's discretion and approval. And so if you are doing a phased approach, it would be a three-phase only. Nothing higher than that. It would be up to three phases, as well as the reasoning should be documented in your pre-application. So this is just what Zoom grants would show if you were looking for the Neighborhood Vitality and Beautification Grant for 2026. You can find that on zoomgrants.com, making an account for your HOA, and then waiting for the program to open, which will open January 16th. That is a Friday. So things to remember. The city will not accept applications or questions submitted by the management company. All submittals and inquiries should come from the neighborhood residents. Be sure to refer to program guidelines when applying for the grant and submitting a reimbursement. Work cannot start until notice to proceed has been issued. That will be an automatic disqualification if work starts before then. Um, Voluntary groups can take advantage of the option to have city pay vendors directly with proof that neighborhood portion has been paid. So if you are going that route, you would have to show within your final notice that your neighborhood match, that 30% has been paid before we are able to match that and pay the vendors directly. The city match is a reimbursement. There are no upfront payments. Reimbursements will be issued after submitting reimbursement requests with proof of payment. The city also does not reimburse taxes. So that is what I have for today. The next steps moving forward, please go visit our city website. We will be uploading this grant workshop within our city website for you to view at all times. And then we have our grant program guidelines within there that's been updated. Please go please look on the city website for that, as well as creating a Zoom grants account. That is very important to get started on your pre-application, as well as any details that you need to finalize before the pre-application gets started. If you have any questions, my name is Kenya Felder. My number is 972-208-8150. And you can email me your interests or the scope of your work for your grant project that you want to do at neighborhoodgrants@plano.com.